And we are now live, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So welcome everyone to the November 21st meeting of the Youth Advisory Committee. We've already confirmed that there is quorum, so we'll call this meeting to order at 5:06 p.m. And I would like to begin by reading the land acknowledgements. So the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'd like to begin by doing a roll call just to make sure that everyone's video and audio are working appropriately. And if people are able to keep their cameras on, that's wonderful. Just helps sort of make the meetings a bit more personal, I find. But I'll start off with Zoya. I see you're already there.
Yep, can you hear me?
Wonderful. We can hear loud and clear. Abraham?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abraham.
You're welcome.
And Crystal? There we go. Now we see you. Let's see if Crystal's here. I don't see her in the meeting. Damini, I saw you earlier.
I'm here.
Abdullah,
Hello.
here we go. Fantastic. Simone, I don't see her in the meeting either. Tanya, I see you already there. Just Chester audio.
Yep. Hi.
Perfect. We hear you. Isabella.
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful. And then last but not least, Fathan. Don't think I see her in the meet. All right, so that's the roll call. So it's that time of year again where we're doing the chair election and the vice chair as well. So I'll invite Dorothy to sort of take over.
Thank you, Cyril. So at this point, I would like to call for nominations for the position of chair to the Youth Advisory Committee. You can nominate anyone, or you can nominate yourself as well.
Nominate myself.
Do we have a seconder for that nomination?
Just a question. Does it have to be like the nomination? Does it have to be like someone, like in university, or could it be like me or Hanya?
It can be anyone on the committee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do we have a seconder for Cyril's nomination for chair?
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations for the position of chair?
I nominate for Zoya.
So do we have a seconder for Zoya?
I second.
And I will call it their time for the nomination of chair. Do we have any other nominations? Perfect. So since we have more than one person, I will share a link to SurveyMonkey, and then you can click the link and then vote for either Zoya or Cyril, and then I will let you know the appointed chair from that. So just give me 1 second. So the link to the SurveyMonkey is in the chat right there. And then I just shared my screen. 1 second. Just to let you know who is candidate 1 and who is candidate 2. Can you guys see my screen? If you can just let me know if everyone's ready to go. You can just put a thumbs up in the chat.
The link didn't work for me, so I'm gonna have to type it like out into the bar, search bar. So it might take me a second.
Oh, okay.
Can you resend the link?
Okay, sure. 1 second. I will resend it. Does anyone else still need more time, or we're good to go?
One more second, sorry.
Okay. Okay. So the appointed person for the position of chair is Zoya. Congratulations. Can we have a mover and a seconder to appoint Zoya as the chair of the Youth Advisory Committee?
I'll move.
Oh, Crystal moved and Abraham seconded. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Congratulations, Zoya. You can take over now for the election of vice chair.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to call for the election of the vice chair. I'll need a mover and a seconder for a nomination, and feel free to nominate yourself.
I'm nominating myself.
Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll
I
second.
second.
Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself.
And do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Any others? Okay, Dorothy, would you be sending in another SurveyMonkey link?
Yes, just give me 1 second. I will send that in the chat. Just to confirm that everyone can see my screen, and just a thumbs up when you're ready in the chat. Thank you. Does anyone need a couple more minutes or we're good to go? So the successful candidate was 0. Congratulations, and we'll need a motion, mover and a seconder to appoint 0 as the vice chair.
I'll second.
Oh, I'll move.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair Zoya, you can go ahead with the agenda. Good to go.
The next order of business is approving the minutes from October 17th. Are there any changes the committee wishes to make on the minutes? Okay. Now I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes. It requires a mover and a seconder.
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay, this motion carries. For the third point, Dorothy, are there any additions or deletions to the approval of additions?
We don't have any additions or deletions to the agenda, but we do have a request to move agenda item 9.1.1 to follow just after the approval of the order of business. So right after this, we can get the presentation from 9.1.
Okay, and that addition number 9.1.1 is the Youth Advocate Program for
Yes.
anyone not having the copy with them. So we need a mover and a seconder for this.
I'll move.
I'll second.
There's no business arising from the minutes. Are there any conflicts of interest?
Oh, sorry, Chair. So since we moved the Youth Advocate Program presentation to happen just after the order of business, Chris needs to come and then do the presentation now because we moved his presentation up. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hello. So I should be able to share my screen. Okay, so it says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Give me 1 second. Sorry. You should be able to share now.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Okay. Now, so, oops. I'm not great with Zoom, so bear with me for 1 second. I think. Let me try that again. When it pops up, it says choose what to share with Zoom, and then when I click entire screen, the share button is grayed out.
I'm not too sure. Would you like me to share a presentation for you?
Yeah, that might be easier. And then when I get to the updated statistics, I can just explain them from my presentation that I have here.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I think I figured it out, if it's not too late. Okay, never mind, this works perfectly.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Technology, not fun. Sometimes it is fun. Anyway, so my name is Christopher Saunier. I'm the community worker with the Youth Advocate Program. Here, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be here this evening to take part in your meeting. Unfortunately, I have a second job that I have. It starts at 6, so I was hoping to get this moved up a little bit earlier. But yeah, anyway, again, thank you for letting me be here. And yeah, here we go to learn more about the Youth Advocate Program. So starting off, if anybody doesn't really know what the Youth Advocate Program is, what is YAP? So the Youth Advocate Program, or YAP, is a voluntary community-based crime prevention, intervention, and advocacy program for youth ages 9 to 15 who are either involved in criminalized activity, have charges, or are at a high risk of receiving charges or engaging in criminalized activities or behaviors. It initially started as a pilot in 2007 with 4 neighborhoods throughout the municipality. And then after 5-year pilot, it was evaluated by a third-party research organization through Dalhousie University. And they essentially, established that it was a success. And then the municipality took it over as a permanent service. And it has been ever since. if you could click through a few more. And then, yeah, so it operates with 9 youth advocate workers within 9 communities, serving a total capacity of 45 youth. Below here, these are the communities which we currently serve. Yeah, so moving on to the goals and the core approach of the Youth Advocate Program. So overall, as I mentioned before, it's a program which focuses on working with youth who are at a high risk of engaging in criminalized activity or are engaging in criminalized activity, and essentially moving them from that into better situations. But more specifically, it focuses on focuses on increasing resiliency and pro-social skills, strengthening family and community supports, and reducing involvement in the criminal justice system, as well as overall fostering safer, more inclusive communities. Its core approaches essentially focus on addressing the root causes that will lead these youth into situations where they sort of end up choosing more criminalized activities. They focus on using collaboration, so working with youth, their family, as well as the supports that exist within youth's individual communities, whether that be the service providers, social workers, school staff, such as Schools Plus workers, counselors, teachers, guidance counselors, essentially all coming together to create a safety net around the youth. It works under sort of, it uses a cultural lens to ensure that it's providing youth with the services and the, sorry, I'm a little nervous when it comes to presenting, with providing them with the services that are right for them, as well as adapting when need be. And one of the main aspects of the Youth Advocate Program is that it focuses on individualized action plans with the youth. So each youth advocate worker has a caseload of youth which they work one-on-one with. They create individualized action plans with the youth and their families focused on their unique needs, rather than just using some sort of copy and paste plan. So the eligibility criteria for a youth to be accepted into the Youth Advocate Program, like I mentioned before, it's youth ages 9 to 15 at the time of referral. So if a youth is referred to the program when they're 15, but they're on the wait list until they're 16 or 17, then they can still make it into the program if they end up getting a spot. At the moment, it has to be a youth who lives within the program boundaries. So those 9 communities that were mentioned before. Unfortunately, if a youth is within one of those boundaries, but then they move, then they do have to exit the program. Other than that, youth who demonstrate behaviors that are linked to chargeable offenses or youth who have been charged. So in Nova Scotia, youth can't be charged until they are the age of 12. So when it comes to the 9 to 11 bracket, it would be youth who are engaging in activities that they would be charged for if they were of age. Next, and one of the most important, is risk factors. So, that was my bad. So youth who are facing challenges in multiple life areas, all 3 to be specific, of home, school, and community. So these are the areas which we've identified that youth tend to spend the majority of their time with limited protective factors. So examples of protective factors would be, limited school supports, an unstable home environment, limited access to mental health resources. So youth are facing challenges in these areas, but don't necessarily have access to the supports that would, in a normal situation, help them overcome. Next would be exposure to violence. So a youth who has been exposed to violence or crime, whether that be through a family member who's incarcerated, friends or family members who are involved in criminal behavior, or who have been charged. Youth who have low resiliency and pro-social skills. So pro-social skills are essentially just the opposite of anti-social skills. So pro-social skills would be communication, anger management, solving, things within emotional intelligence. And lastly, youth who have limited connection to support networks. So if they, as mentioned before, don't really have a connection to a therapist, but mental health tends to be one of the biggest issues we find is driving them in this direction, then that would be limited connection to those supports. And you can go to the next one. And then so here I sort of have just a roadmap of a youth from the referral all the way to graduation. You can click the next two. So referrals come directly from the community. As a community-based program, we work directly in the communities where the youth live, which is part of the big reason why initially when they started, they wanted it to be focused on specific communities, because obviously we know that building strength in the community is a big step in building the strength within the youth themselves, and vice versa. Starts with a youth being referred from a referral source, whether that be a guidance counselor, a teacher, a schools plus worker, a police officer, compliance officer, anybody who has been able to observe the youth in situations which would obviously lead them to believe that they are going in the direction to criminalize behavior and activities. I lost where I was. Oh yes. So essentially, the youth are referred. Once they've been identified by the referral source, they get consent from the youth and the parent to refer the youth. So they do need the consent. This is a voluntary program. So if a youth is referred to the program, but they, for whatever reason, choose not to, they cannot be forced into the program. So with restorative justice, judges can essentially mandate youth to partake in certain programs, but this is not that sort of program. They need to volunteer to be in it. So yes, once they get the referral, the intake and assessment coordinator will meet with the family to assess the youth, their eligibility. They will essentially, they have lists of questions they ask and criteria that they're looking for. And it's just multiple very long conversations. It's less like check this box and more like getting to know the family dynamic, getting to know the youth over a certain period of time. And then they bring that back to the entire team. We all go over the files together and have a discussion about the youth and where they sort of land on the spectrum. And then if they're accepted, they are assigned a youth advocate worker. Although at this time, there are no open spots at youth advocate workers, so they would be assigned to the youth advocate workers waitlist. And then if they're not accepted, we try to provide any other resources that we can. So for example, we are able to get access passes for rec centers in various communities. So that's something that at least can sort of help with the recreational side, or we can try and help them get into one of the IWK's mental health services programs like FIOS. So if they make it into the program, they will be assigned a youth advocate worker. They will work with the youth advocate worker to create their action plan. So they will do several assessments to sort of get a gauge of where they are in terms of their pro-social skills, their resiliency, get an idea of obviously the situations that have occurred, what their charges are if they have any, essentially what they have going on in their lives. Then they work with them to create the plan and then work together to figure out how they're going to reach these goals. The youth advocate workers will check in 3 to 5 times a week with their youth. So during the school year, this tends to take place at school. They do this, and then there's ongoing evaluation. So they evaluate the youth at the beginning, and then there's no formal evaluation again until the end, but it's essentially just conversations with the youth observing the youth when they're together, when they're doing their outings, when they're doing things towards their goals. So for example, if one of the youth's goals is to do 2 full days of school this week. Let's say like the school is one of their trouble areas. They skip a lot of classes, or when they're at school, they tend to leave or they tend to get kicked out. One of their goals could be just going to school for 2 days in a row, and then working with the youth advocate worker to figure out what the barriers for them staying in school is. If it's the relationship they have with their teacher, if they feel like that is a tough spot, then figuring out how they can sort of build that relationship up and bridge that gap. So the evaluation in these sort of situations is just evaluating how the youth is going about sort of reaching those goals. Next is the graduation. So if it is found, after 6 months to a year tends to be how long youth remain in the program until graduation. They evaluate them again once they start to feel like they have reached those goals. So they evaluate them on their increased resiliency, pro-social skills, and their support networks, their trajectory within the criminal justice system, and then a transition plan is created for them, then one more final evaluation, and then they're graduated. Yes, you move to the next slide. So this sort of lays out what the action planning looks like. So on the left, or my left, on the side closest to the big blue word action there, that focuses on the increased connection to supports. The side on the other side, the right, and also I can provide this again. I don't think this was in the report that I sent out, but this is in a one-pager that's on our website, but I'll email it again afterwards. This just sort of shows, breaks down the types of things that youth advocate workers focus on with their youth or do with their youth to reach these goals, and then the intersection in the middle where these things sort of come together. And then I have some program statistics. So these are for, okay, yes, these are the updated ones. So these are the statistics for 2024. So we received 76 total referrals from communities in 2024. There were 87 active case files in 2024. So that includes youth who were referred on the wait list, currently active or graduated. Currently, there are 39 active youth. So while the total capacity at the moment is 45, we did just recently have a youth advocate worker. She's moved on to a different position. So we have been trying to fill that spot. And luckily, recently we have hired a new youth advocate worker. So we will be thankful to be having her to put 6 more youth into the program. Currently, there are 37 referrals on wait lists. So these are referrals who the intake and assessment coordinator has met with the youth and their family. She has done the assessment, so now they are specifically on wait lists. There are 50 youth total in the program in 2024. So that includes youth who were graduated or active. There were 11 graduations in 2024, and currently the longest wait list is in the Bears, Westwood, Fairview, Clayton Park. We need a better name for that, but that area, which is a trend. So that tends to be the longest waitlist area. Then you can go to the next one. And so essentially now going over the benefits of YAP for the youth. So the increased resiliency and skills, so building the pro-social skills to help them navigate challenges. So obviously these are youth who are not necessarily, although they have made choices that have led them into these situations, it tends to be youth who find themselves in situations where choices are already taken from them. So it makes it a lot harder for them to navigate these situations with sort of the background that they have or the situations that they find themselves in. So one of the pros is building up those skills that allow them to make better choices. Improve support systems, so connecting youth and families with the critical resources that they need, whether that be food security, transportation, employment services, mental health services, whatever it might be for that youth. Reduction in risk factors, so again, addressing the root causes like the exposure to the violence or low self-esteem. Personalized development plans, so tailoring the action plans to meet unique needs, and the positive trajectories in the not only in the justice system but in their lives as a whole. in terms of education, employment. And then lastly, for the benefits are the benefits to the community. So crime prevention, obviously early intervention will reduce crime not only at this moment, but for years to come. If the trajectory, obviously, of a youth who's engaged in criminalized activity now, unfortunately, tends to be that they will continue to be engaged in criminalized activity for years to come. Next would be stronger family connections, so reinforcing family bonds, strengthening community fabric, enhance civic engagement, empowers youth to actively participate and lead in their communities. One of the great things about having this be a program that exists under Parks and Recreation is that the Parks and Recreation already has hundreds of programs that employs or has volunteers of thousands of youth every year in leadership roles, in employment situations. So it's a lot easier to get them from this program once they graduate, or even when they're in the program, into other positions that will help them improve their pro-social skills, make friends, improve their lives in many ways. Next would be the economic impact. So it was laid out in the report that I sent over, and I meant to include it here, but it just provided an example of the costs for incarceration for one youth over 1 year. It's over 100,000 in tax dollars, and then the cost of a youth going through the Youth Advocate program for 1 year, which is about, I think it was a little bit over half, 50-something thousand. So that alone, but on top of that, preparing youth for future roles, employment, boosting local economies, and lastly, collaborative solutions. So facilitates partnerships for unified community action. So a lot of the partnerships, not only between the social workers, guidance counselors, but also the service providers and employers who would also be working with the youth. And then you can move on to the next one. And you can click all the way until everything pops up here. I think, yeah, that should be good. So now that gave sort of background and overview of what the Youth Advocate Program is and what it has been doing. Moving forward, we have that same report that you all saw is one that's going to council sometime within the new year, the Halifax Regional Council, as a request for many things, but things that are essentially hoping to help us identify some of these gaps. So currently, we see that there's a limited capacity. So we have 40 youth right now in the program, but then there are more now, or less than 40. So about 40 in the program, 40 waitlisted. Increased need for culturally responsive supports and insufficient prevention programs for younger youth. So below the future projects that we hope would hit on some of these things, expanding capacity with 2 new supervisors and 2 to 3 new youth advocate workers. So that would be introducing the culturally specific positions, the Indigenous youth advocate worker, the African Nova Scotian youth advocate worker, and the newcomer/immigrant youth advocate worker. So these would be different, rather than working in specific communities. They would focus on youth who identify more so with these youth advocate workers. Next would be launching the SNAP program. So SNAP stands for Stop Now and Plan. It's less of a crime intervention program and advocacy, and more so preventing it at a younger age. So it focuses on working with youth ages 6 to 12, as well as their families, focusing on mental health resources, planning, judgment, and decision-making, and ideally just stopping the path there before it turns into something else. And lastly, removing the geographic boundaries to ensure equitable access. So currently we have 9 boundaries. If a youth is in the program, but they move out of one of those boundaries, they unfortunately have to leave the program because of the way it's designed. So ideally, we would remove the boundaries so that any youth could partake in the program. Because obviously, even though statistically we've seen that there tend to be more issues within these areas, there are still issues everywhere else. I think that is it. I think I went way over 10 minutes, but I do very much appreciate you all sitting through that and listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks so much for that, Chris. I'm just putting a couple YouTube links in the chat. There's a shorter promotional video for YAP, and there's a longer one if you folks are interested in diving deeper into YAP or even sharing some of those links with friends and family. They're in the chat. But thanks so much for that, Chris. Super informative. YAP is a program that's near and dear to my heart. I spent 11 years with the program, and lots of really, really exciting changes happening. So thanks for keeping us in the loop.
I see, Crystal, you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a question. So in your presentation, you mentioned that the Bears area has a long wait list. And so I was just curious, with knowing that that area constantly has a long wait list, and it's, I guess, something that's known about it, are there any strategies that have been put into place to mitigate that, or at least future plans to help with that issue?
Yeah. In terms of mitigating that, I think the most that we can do to mitigate that is continuing to have the program running in that area. I mean, the things that happen and the things that exist that tend to lead youth to be the youth in that area to be eligible for this program. Our way of trying to sort of, have any power in stopping that is continuing to have a youth advocate worker who works in that program and works with those youth. The other biggest thing that we're trying to do less proactively and more actively is getting the funds to have more youth advocate workers. So even if we are just able to get 2 of those 3 specific, like culturally specific youth advocate workers, then in theory that does have the potential to lighten the caseload of someone else who then can take on more cases in that area. The other thing would be if we can get rid of all of the boundaries, while that does allow us now to open it up to other youth, which obviously could increase the wait list, it does now let us be more strategic with whose caseloads we put youth on. So, if the Sackville youth advocate worker only has 4 and for some reason no wait list, now they would, or in the future, if we got rid of the boundaries, they would be able to take on youth who are from the Bears Fairview area, rather than having the youth advocate worker in that position just have to wait until they have someone come up. I don't know if that really answers everything. I know that those things are not directly trying to fix that problem, and sort of just, if they come into existence, then they would indirectly fix that problem. I think that's all I have, though, but that's a very good point.
Yes, thank you. I did have another question because you mentioned that you are hiring more culturally specific employees. I just had a question because I guess one thing that is also common is that disability is definitely one of the forms, one of the disabled people with disabilities, sorry for my language, are people who also do struggle with some of these issues and feeling discrimination. Is there going to be someone who maybe is also appointed towards that targeted group as well?
I think ideally in the future, we would be able to have not only someone who's just pointed towards these specific culturally specific or even ability specific youth, but sort of expanding it to as many as we can. I guess sort of in this situation, the reality of it is that in order to get money from council, we need to start very slowly and not, poke the bear too much. So I think historically, these 3 positions came up as being the first ones to focus on, came from statistics showing that youth within, African Nova Scotian youth, newcomer youth, and Indigenous youth at the moment tend to be at a higher level of need for more, individual focus. But, I think absolutely in the future, if council will allow us, we would like to focus on a lot more than just these 3.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so for this program, do you guys go into schools for like outreach to speak to students to like tell them about the program in those areas?
Yeah, so that's actually a big part of my role. It's been slow going into it because we're a lot of the effort recently has been focused on the report to council to try and make these big changes. But slowly, the goal is to get into more schools. So we have been doing it, just not as much as I would like to.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
I also have one more question.
Yeah.
What steps do you take to engage youth that do come to the program but are like disengaged or like hesitant to like participate in the process or the like efforts?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when it comes to youth who so I guess there's 2 sort of paths there. Youth who are referred to the program, and then we go through the process of meeting with them and their family, doing the intake and assessments, and then they voluntarily agree to get into the program. But then once they're in the program, they might not be really trying as much. They might make a meeting with their youth advocate worker to meet twice a week, but then when they show up, they're disengaged and they're not really talking. The fact that they're still there and are still choosing to be in the program, knowing that they, fully don't have to be, that's a lot as it is. I think with youth advocate workers, they just try to build relationships with the youth. So it's more of a thing where I'm not sure if having a youth advocate worker here would make this easier, but essentially just trying to find ways that they can connect with their youth that makes sense. So if say I have a youth and they're really disengaged, but clearly they want to be here, I try to think of activities that they like or things that I can get them engaged with, like say going to a movie or going to a soccer game, and nothing's working. The biggest thing is just trying to learn from them what would be best to help them feel engaged. And then on the other side, if it comes to youth who just disagree and just choose not to be in the program, then they don't obviously make it that far, and then there's nothing we can do except for hope that they do choose to be in the program. It's something that they really need.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Cyril.
So thank you again for the presentation. I know this is one that we got I believe 1 year and a half ago approximately, and it was one of my sort of favorite. I think it's a great program. I read through the brief that you're presenting. Do you know when you're presenting that to council or when the timeline is?
No, so within the new year, but like it's still being worked on, and a few things are still being straightened out.
Okay. And for the boundaries process, when the report mentions that it's sort of, is that really dependent on sort of increased staffing essentially?
Can you repeat that? For some reason,
Yes.
I could not understand.
Yeah, no worries. The aspect regarding boundaries, eliminating the boundaries, is that essentially dependent on receiving increased staffing?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, because if we got rid of the boundaries now, the wait list would just increase, but that wouldn't allow us to help more youth faster. So yeah, having more staff, obviously, that is the biggest thing.
Okay. And the other one, the SNAP, I thought it's an excellent program. I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to do some reading on it. I'll throw something in the chat. It's essentially sort of a form of, at least from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like a form of cognitive behavioral therapy essentially for people sort of ages 6 to 12. And the evidence actually seems pretty robust for it in terms of how effective it is. And I know especially one of the big barriers to CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy often is cost. And is my understanding correct that this would be free of cost to people?
Yeah, just like the youth advocate program. It would the costs would just go towards funding the SNAP program, and then youth and families would not have to pay.
Wonderful, because I don't know if any of you know how expensive CBT is, but it's like 200, you pay a licensed psychologist at 220 bucks an hour. And often you're not, no one really goes for an hour and that's it. Unfortunately. But do you think that getting funding will be an obstacle? Like, do you think, like, what are sort of expectations in terms of the meeting with city council?
That's the thing. My supervisor, it would be better with this. It just depends on how much like the current counselors, and I guess some of the new counselors, find this to be worth it for them. Like, obviously, youth advocate program, we have stats that show that it works and that it does help the communities, and this is just another way of doing that, but at an earlier age, which is when you actually want to treat trauma before it sets in. Then it becomes worse, and then it turns into you feel like you're in a box, and the only way to escape are these things that are going to hurt other people, essentially. But it just comes down to council thinking that it's worth it. So doing whatever we can, and that's why it's still taking some time to work on this, to figure out, exactly how to go about this, that will show them that, hey, this works in other places and it can work here, and it's definitely beneficial for the communities here.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great program. I'm in medical school, and we talk a lot about sort of different forms of cognitive behavioral therapy, and I think that this would be an excellent option if it's available from the community. Fantastic. Sweet. I think Becca just said in the chat that the funding for SNAP will be coming from Public Safety Canada grant to cover the cost of the pilot.
Yes, and I did know that.
Anyways, that was my main question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Anything?
Is there anything that we can do for you? Like, do you think that having someone from the Youth Advisory Committee at the council meeting would be beneficial, or is there any, like, what can we do for you, I guess?
Yeah, it might be easier, like, to maybe have a more thorough discussion at a later time, but definitely having sort of like you folks on our side, sort of just repeating and reinforcing that, we need the funding, to have more staff. We need the boundaries to go away. Just, we need these things to address these gaps, because obviously with the report that came out last year about violence in schools, and what we see around us every day, things are getting worse. So, if things are going to keep getting worse, then obviously more things should be done to sort of address that. So yeah, anything in terms of specifically coming back to you on how, because I would like to, I guess, learn more about what you all do, and then the impact that you have. Yeah. And then Zoya.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Cyril's question was also my question. But to build on that, I was also kind of wondering, like, to get as far as your team has now, what has kind of been your strategy? Because you said that it's kind of hard to get council to see not the importance, but to give more financial and more outward support. So what has been your strategy in getting as far as you have now?
Yeah. So I'm actually very new to the program in terms of its life, starting in 2007. The biggest thing that I'm aware of has been the stats, just the evidence-based, the evidence just showing that, the program has changed the trajectory of these youth lives. Like, this was what they were doing. These are the lists of things that they've been dealing with, and how it sort of caused them to make these decisions, where they end up, now in a situation where they are dealing with the criminal justice system, and then how being in the program has allowed them to increase their pro-social skills and build resiliency, so that they do make better decisions, rather than the ones that they would have made prior. So a lot of it is just evidence and statistics, and just showing that this is real.
Thank you. Yeah, we can definitely discuss further about what the Youth Advisory Committee can do for you, and how the powers that we have can support your cause.
Yeah. And Crystal.
I was just a little bit curious. I don't know if this is possible, but would you be able to just share like a highlight story or like a success story that I don't know would be okay being shared just to hear maybe a little bit of how the work has impacted someone's life? Because I feel like I would be able to paint a better picture in my mind, at least.
I am very unfortunate to say that I don't have one that comes to mind. So I myself am not a youth advocate worker. Adam might actually have more than me. So I don't work directly with the youth other than outside within the Girls United program, which is a secondary thing. But Adam might.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been in the role, and I'd say, Crystal, to your question, I think success means very many different things to many different people. So the program's so individualized, and one of the strengths of the program is the smaller caseload and how intensive you can work with the youth and families. I know with the youth that I've worked over time, I mean, success. It might be celebrating the fact that a youth went to school every day one week, and for another youth, it might be celebrating the fact that they were able to quit using drugs. It really depends on the youth and the situation. I mean, we've had youth that were in the program for 3+ years. I think of one youth in particular in the North Dartmouth community a number of years ago. I remember the first time I met this youth. They had thrown a giant rock through the windshield of one of the youth advocate workers. I think it was my first or second day actually on the job. And that youth's risk factors were through the roof. They were in trouble with police, in and out of Waterville, rolling with the wrong crowd. And I remember through their relationship with their youth advocate worker, who was the one constant in their life. That's another thing about this program. It's not like a 3 strikes you're out type program. A lot of times these youth advocate workers are kicking around for quite some time, and we'll get fired multiple times by the youth, and then a couple of days later they'll come back and rehire us. But yeah, success means really many different things. It really depends on the individual and the situation. But this one youth that I was talking about ended up actually graduating from the program, working with Youth Live at the time, which is now Youth Works, and is now a supervisor with Youth Live, doing really, really, really well, completely changed their life around, and is doing really well. And there's a lot of success stories like that. And there's a lot of stories that unfortunately go the other way. But YAP is an awesome program, evidence-based. It's renowned across the country for the work that it's done since its inception. And yeah, hats off to you, Chris, and the rest of the team for the work that you do. I don't know if that answers your question, Crystal. Sorry if it doesn't.
No, that's good. I just wanted to hear a little bit about the work and you described it really well, so thank you.
Awesome.
And I, very sad to say this, but I do have to get going. I have a second job and my shift started 5 minutes ago. But as I said before, I would be very interested in meeting again, just to go over maybe more of how you guys, how we could work together more to get things maybe pushed along a little bit. I don't know the best way about going about doing that. If it would be emailing Dorothy again? Or
yeah, I think you could reach out to Dorothy or even Becca, now that Becca's back in the role and very much connected to the youth section. I think either Becca or Dorothy, or Zoya or Ciro, even potentially.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I'd just like to thank you guys again for allowing me to be here, allowing me to talk, even though sometimes not the best presenter. But I really appreciate your interest and for allowing me to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Chris. I hope we didn't get you fired.
I'll be fine. Okay, thank you guys.
That was really great. I think we can have a discussion about this towards the end of the meeting if anyone has any comments. But for now, are there any conflict of interest before we move on? Okay. Dorothy, was there any correspondence received by the clerk's office?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office or petitions were received by the clerk's office.
Okay, so since we had the Youth Advocate Program presentation, now Cyril's going to tell us a bit about an update he has for the committee community engagement we were talking about in our last meeting. So take the floor.
So, this was sort of just a follow-up on what we talked about last meeting, and also just sort of creating some plans for what we could sort of do for the rest of the year. I took the liberty of doing, I know we made a lot of good points last meeting. I still have them in front of me. I want to bring those up again. I also did some research in terms of what other youth advisory committees are doing across the country, just to sort of get some ideas in terms of sort of concrete stuff and outcomes that we can sort of look at over the next year. There was a couple that I want to bring up, and at any point, please, like, feel free to cut me off, whatever, if something comes to mind, please feel free. There was one in particular that I thought was really interesting, which was a youth employment summit. Toronto did this this year, where they essentially brought a lot of stakeholders and a lot of youth and tried to see as well what they could do to sort of help increase employment among youth, because I mean that's a huge issue in Halifax and Nova Scotia as a whole. And part of it that was really interesting is that I don't know, I think for us it might make sense almost to include it under the youth summit. If we do one sort of next May or whenever we typically do it. I think that that could be a good forum to do that, where we can include, you know, people who have like Phoenix House and the the advocacy program, bring them in, and also bring in sort of stakeholders as well for employment. One also thing that I think we haven't talked about much the last couple of years, and that's sort of becoming more and more relevant, is transit. It's, you know, something that's under municipal purview, and I know that Halifax has that the new bus program, BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit program that they've been trying to get off the ground the last couple of years, but they sort of haven't been able to, just due to lack of funding from the provincial and the mainly the provincial, but also the federal level. I think that that's something we could possibly look into, because, you know, part of the reason this meeting was online today was because of you know, we had a request for staff. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Becca, the request for staff report from transit. Because that's something we honestly haven't discussed much the last few years. And I was actually about to say that you know, the whole reason for this meeting being online today was we have a shorter agenda than most meetings, and we didn't want to sort of have everyone brave the traffic to come in for what would be probably a short meeting, or short, not short, but a shorter meeting. So I think that that's something that's very relevant nowadays. And I know that that was a hot button topic during the municipal election, and specifically something that, you know, Andy Fillmore sort of brought up in his campaign, the new mayor. So that's something worth bringing up. And another idea I wanted to propose is, over the weekend we went to Ottawa for it's the Canadian Federation of Medical Students National Day of Action. So essentially we talked to a bunch of MPs regarding mainly healthcare. I was wondering, Becca or Adam, if you guys could answer this for me. Is there any like room in our terms of reference that we can try and have meetings with, let's say, someone from the province, like, you know, some stuff in our, like if we're looking at housing, for example, or, you know, there's some issues that we sort of touch on that are on that municipal provincial sort of blurry line. And I wonder, is there room for us as a committee to try and see if, you know, we can meet with a couple members of parliament and or MLAs, see if we can meet with some of the ministers. I'm not sure if that's something we can do as a committee. If so, I think it's at least something to consider. Another
was
thing, yes, go ahead.
also wondering, like, would we be able to meet the new mayor and have a conversation with him? And also, he just got to the position, so I totally understand if it's like not, yeah.
That's a great point. That's something we brought up also, I think, last time, but also seeing a couple of councilors.
Yeah, meeting with the mayor, that's something we've done in the past, and we had brunch with the mayor at City Hall and did a tour of City Hall. But with a new mayor in office, that's a great idea. That's something I can look into that and see when we want to do that. Dorothy, you would be better equipped to answer if the committee is allowed to meet with MLAs or other levels of government.
I think that that's something we can take away probably and find out for you and then bring it back to the committee.
Okay. And actually back on that brunch with them, I think another brunch with the mayor, I mean, obviously depending on if that's something they want to do, but I think that that was really beneficial last year. We invited, a lot of youth from the community, sort of gave them an opportunity. So I thought that that was a really successful event. If that's something we could sort of get off the ground. And one last one of at least stuff that I was researching from other programs is also if I wonder if we could look with the Halifax Regional School Board. I know that sort of a lot of the stuff that we talked about last meeting was relative to, how to create CVs, how to, sort of do job interviews and cover letters and a lot of stuff like that. And I think that that's something that, at least from what our high school members were saying, isn't really part of the school curriculum. Once again, I know teachers are sort of already hard pushed to do everything already that's in the curriculum, but I was wondering if that might be something that people would be interested in, and seeing if we can get a meeting with someone from the Halifax HR. Is it HRCE, the English one? Okay. Yeah. But I'll leave the floor for now. I have also a list of everything we talked about last meeting. But I thought at least that's a couple ideas that I did some research on that it seems like other cities have been able to sort of do successfully. So I think that that could be at least something to look into for the next year or so.
Thanks, that's really great. Becca, you would put in the chat about a request for a staff report. Should we pass a motion for that this meeting? Or is that something that that the Youth Advisory Committee doesn't need to request?
If that's something that the committee wants, if you want a staff report on the status of where they're at with that project or what alternatives that they want in place, it's up to you as a committee. You can definitely. I think we did it before, didn't we? With
I feel like we did, yeah.
200.
Yeah, so it'd be that same process.
Okay.
I just wanted to add on that as well, that it might be helpful to maybe think about what exactly, what information you'd require from the staff report, and then we could probably work on a motion, and then bring it back to the committee after we've figured out what the committee wants to do and which business units to actually engage on that.
And I was also
So maybe this
go
is
ahead.
something for our next meeting we can put on the agenda, discuss what that motion would look like, and we can take time during the next meeting to actually formulate what the motion is, what exactly you want in that report from staff, and then you could even probably pass that motion by the end of that meeting.
Sounds good. I was also thinking for the BRT question, a lot of my professors in planning, they've talked about it. Would it help to have like a presentation from a transportation planner to talk about like the transit options and where things are going? To get like a realistic kind of roadmap or better understanding of the process?
Well, let's just start in that staff report. Like, even if we get someone from Halifax Transit or from the planning, I don't know exactly who formulated the original BRT plan, but just because, I mean, it's nice that Halifax already has a plan. I know that, lots of years of planning and community engagement went into the BRT, and it's something that can sort of, I don't want to say quickly be done, but quicker than, let's say, a train or, sort of those other fun options that you see pitched in the news. And when, I know that the provincial government, or at least the PCs in Nova Scotia, part of their platform is doing a research study on Windsor, a train line from Windsor to Halifax. Part of the issue with that is their plan is to create a plan or look into it. So, I mean, even if they end up saying that that's viable, that probably won't be for 10, 15 years. And, the nice thing is the ferry construction is sort of, or at least the ferry project has money and is off the ground for the Milpo ferry. And I think that, part of that is getting the BRT sort of into that, because I mean, I took the bus for all of undergrad. And I use the bus a lot, not as much anymore, just because with all of traffic and where I live in Bedford, I'm usually like 30 minutes. Like if I took the bus, I'm usually 30 minutes late. And with my program, there's no excuse that I took the bus, I'm late, and there really isn't for many jobs, unfortunately. And I think that having good transit reliability is huge. And the more people you can get off the roads, out of their cars into buses, and the better traffic will be at the end of the day.
Weird question. You said you live in Bedford. Did you go to CPA?
No, I went to the French schools actually. So I went to the
Oh.
Sommet first. Yeah, and that's why I asked what is HSE, and well, I was like, we did separate. So
Yeah, that's true.
I graduated back in 2019 though, so it's been a while. But yeah, I mean, I know I sort of threw a lot against the wall. Um, we don't have to do all of those. I think that, if a couple stick, I think that's the goal. The nice thing is I think it'd be really important for us to get the youth summit going. Becca, I know that's maybe something we can talk about at a later meeting, but I know that in the past, like usually it takes a while, like booking, if you want to do it at the central library, for example, and all that.
Hi. So I just wanted to add something that, me, Adam, and Dorothy were talking about a couple weeks ago. So last meeting we were talking about, booths and stuff so people could get to know us because a lot of people don't. And our school had an opportunities fair tonight. So that's why I was there. But for the past couple weeks, I've been emailing Adam and Dorothy, and I've been looking into like different events where we could do those. So our school is having another one mid-March that we could look into. I have no idea what it's called. I just know it's happening. But that would be a good idea for us to branch out and get people to know us. I've also been starting on designing some posters and brochures that we could print out. So, and if you guys have any ideas for things like that, then just email me or whatever. Because I think it would be a good way for us to connect with youth so they know who we are. Yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. So
it's a great idea, Heba.
That is a great idea. Just to flag, anything that's promoting the committee has to be done through us. So if you want a poster, we have a lot of different files that have already been created by our corporate communications department that we can have printed for you, and then you can put those posters up. So just want to make sure that anything that is being designed to promote this committee needs to come through us first.
Oh, okay. That's fine then. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, no problem.
And to piggyback on that, those are amazing ideas. I was thinking at first that it would be cool for us all to get together for Christmas, and then I was like, why don't we do something that could actually have an impact inside of community? So like if we could do some like volunteering at either for like fundraising for shelter, or like because me and my friend a few years ago we did something for Atsum House. So like maybe as like a group or something picking a shelter to help fundraise for, or just to go to help out in December or something.
It's a great idea. And actually, I was just about to suggest that, but you had a much better idea than me. I was just going to say that I think it'd be a good team bonding. Also, it's an opportunity for us, if we go somewhere, volunteer as a group. But I think it's also important to, I think, the more volunteering we do in the community, the more people see you, the more people know you exist. And I think that's sort of, I think it's, if we can do a combination of that, that volunteering in the community and also sort of the Heba, the community engagement you talked about, I think that would both be very beneficial and great ideas.
I also just wanted to add on Heba's idea. I was thinking CPA is a good option, but we could also connect with Central Library or any other libraries to kind of connect with the youth, or just to like get the word of HRM YEC out there. Yeah, wait, there was something else. Wait, I'll remember and then I'll let you guys know.
The library is a good point. Keshen Goodman is always packed, at least from students from the West.
Becca and Dorothy, I had a question. With all our ideas that we kind of want to pursue outside of our committee meeting times, is this something we'd have to do as like a personal initiative? Because I know that within our youth advisory committee meetings, we're kind of bound by agenda and, a certain process. So if we wanted to say like volunteer together, like the same people as we are in the committee, but not using the committee name to do it, is that something that we'd have to do? Or is it okay if we say like as the youth advisory committee, we wanted to do Christmas volunteering? How would that work?
I think that would mean you would do it in your personal capacity, because anything that you do, like in terms of like, if you hold like a meeting, it has to be like a formal meeting
Yeah,
as
that's
the
what I was
youth advisory
thinking.
committee. But if you're like doing volunteering, it'll be in your personal capacity.
Okay, and then the fact that all of us as committee members who happen to be on the same committee but are doing it in our personal, like, just like that, that would be fine, right?
Yes, I believe
So
so.
that's okay. So that's something we'd have to coordinate out of meetings or something like that.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So we can still do it. Okay, that's good.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I remember now. So do we have any like media handles that we could connect with the youth or just spread the word of Yak? Or
Yeah, so there's a Halifax HFX Next Gen Instagram account, which is Halifax official account for youth things. And so we often post about the youth advisory committee on there as well.
Oh, just to go off of that, I remember a few years ago, it feels like a few years ago, but we had this introduction post for everyone. Like we might have made like a reel or
Headshots, yeah.
something. And we have a lot of new members, so maybe we could revisit that and try that again.
Yeah, I'll put that on my list to do. And so just to let folks know who weren't a part of that, what we did was we had headshots taken of each person, and on our Instagram account, each person was featured in a different post with just like a little bit about them and like introduction to the youth advisory committee, that sort of thing. So that's a good point, Zoya. We're probably due for an update on that sort of thing now. So I will look into that. I think like maybe December's pretty busy, so I think maybe January we can start looking at like all those different promotional pieces.
And I was wondering, how active is the Instagram?
It's probably like at least 2 posts a month, but that's about it.
Okay. Would it
Yeah.
be possible for us to like find ways to make that like more prevalent?
I think there's ways we could, yes, definitely discuss that. If you want to put that on an agenda for another meeting, again, not in just maybe January, we could also talk about that.
Mhm.
We could create like a calendar where there's certain days or certain things happening throughout the month that the committee wants on the social media account. I run the account, so that I feel like we should be able to figure that out.
Sounds good.
Quick question about I know we currently, the December meeting is if required. I mean, we can talk about that sort of outside the meeting as well, but would people be interested in having a December meeting? I think it could be beneficial just for a couple of things we've talked about today, but I know that usually, it's close to the holidays and people are sometimes away. So, I mean, no pressure. We can, always discuss this by email after the meeting.
I feel like we could do the meeting, but like make it early December and probably like a virtual meeting just to like, like make sure everyone's available for that.
Yeah, I think that would
Sounds
work.
good.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, sounds good. You're all good, Zoya.
Okay. I don't know if everyone has their exams get, or no, not everyone's in university, but I think my exam should be done by the 12th, hopefully. So if we do it earlier in December, I might have to opt out if I have an exam that day, but if it works for most other people, then yeah, we can do that.
I also just wanted to add to that, in terms of the December meeting, those are conversations you can have with Elizabeth in agenda review when she sets that up, and see what works best, if it's best just to have the meeting or not, if there are any agenda items, like pressing agenda items for December, because the meeting right now is December 12th, so it's the beginning of December.
Okay, is that something we should decide now before we adjourn or as we get closer? Because I think it would be a bit
So when
less-
Elizabeth reaches out with the agenda, we'll do similarly what Dorothy did. She'll reach out to you to both chairs and ask if there's anything else you want to add, or if you feel like that's enough items on the agenda to have the meeting, or if we should wait. And we can get an idea over email too, if that's easier.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, does anyone have any other comments maybe about the presentation we heard from, or to add on to what Sarah talked about? If not, then we can adjourn for today. But yeah, feel free to add anything before we I guess log off.
Looking forward to see the data on the SNAP program, because I'm sure they'll collect the data for it. Be very curious to see, because the link I sent, they have some of the studies they've done on it. They did a randomized control trial, which for those who don't know is like, you know, the sort of the highest level of research you can get for a study. And the data was very promising on it. And I think that as sort of Chris said, that 6 to 12 age group is very important, because that's where your personality is still forming. That's where your habits are forming. And if you can sort of, in theory, if you can target people at that age group, you can sort of, you know, put them on, you know, set them up well.
Yeah, I was reading through the article you put in the chat, and I definitely agree.
I just wanted to ask if there was another way that we could communicate with each other, like apart from emails. Cause I feel like that, like, it's kind of hard for me to find everyone's emails. Like, if I wanted to say something directly to Zoya, like, I would have to like look through like a bunch of emails and just guess which one's hers. So like, if we have like, yeah.
Any official items, correspondence that are for the committee need to be through email, I believe.
Okay.
But if you exchange phone numbers personally or start your own Facebook group or whatever you do and it's ran by you, there's nothing we can do about that. But any official correspondence would have to be through the clerk's office.
Okay, I see.
Okay, I can get in touch with everyone by email like after the meeting, and we can maybe make a group chat on a platform that works for everyone. If we wanted to maybe do the winter volunteering thing, we could discuss that off outside of a meeting. So yeah, I can reach out about that, and we'll make something that works for everyone.
That's good.
Okay, anything else before we adjourn for tonight? Okay, so this just requires a mover to adjourn the meeting, so.
Move.
I'll
All
say.
right.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So the meeting has been adjourned at 6:29 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah.